Tasha walked down the crowded hallways of her high school, her heart sinking with each step she took. The laughter, the whispers, the snickers, she had learned to ignore them, or at least, she tried. But today, they seemed louder, more piercing. She knew what they were saying behind her back. Look at the fat girl. She can barely fit into those clothes. Bet she can't even run a mile. Tasha's stomach twisted in a familiar knot. She tried to hold her head high, but it was difficult when she felt like every eye was on her, judging, laughing, making her feel like she didn't belong. Her mind raced back to the morning, to the way the other girls in her class had snickered when she walked in. They didn't even try to hide their judgment. The popular girls, the ones who always had the latest fashion, who were always the center of attention, looked at her like she was some kind of joke. Tasha didn't know what it felt like to be like them. She didn't know what it was like to wear stylish clothes or have friends who accepted her. Every day, it was the same thing. The insults. The stares. The cold shoulders. She had grown used to it, or at least she pretended to. But today, for some reason, it felt harder. Maybe it was because it had been a rough week. Her parents had been arguing more than usual, and her mom had told her that she needed to lose weight. "You'll feel better if you just try, Tasha," she had said. "Why can't you just be like the other girls?" Tasha clenched her fists, trying to push away the hurt that was creeping up inside her. She didn't want to think about that. She didn't want to think about how she felt like a failure, like there was something wrong with her. She just wanted to get to her next class and try to make it through the day without breaking down. But as she passed the locker room, she heard them. The voices. The familiar laughter. She froze. It was Brooke and her friends. They were leaning against the lockers, whispering to each other as they glanced in Tasha's direction. She knew what was coming. Brooke was one of the most popular girls in school, and she loved making others feel small. Tasha had seen it happen countless times. Brooke would find someone to pick on, someone who didn't fit in, and she'd make their life miserable. Tasha had always been her favorite target. "Look at that," Brooke's voice rang out, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Did you see her today? She's wearing the same old sweater she's been wearing all week. Does she think that's fashionable?" The girls around her giggled, and Tasha's cheeks burned with embarrassment. She didn't look at them. She kept her eyes straight ahead, walking faster now, hoping to make it to her next class without being noticed. But that wasn't how it worked with Brooke. Of course, she wasn't going to let Tasha get away so easily. "Hey, fatty," Brooke called out, her voice dripping with mock sweetness. "You trying to squeeze yourself into that sweater? It's not even close to your size." Tasha's heart dropped. Her face flushed with humiliation. She wanted to fight back, to say something sharp, something that would make them stop. But every time she opened her mouth, the words seemed to get stuck. It felt like no matter what she did, she was always the one who lost. Just as she was about to turn the corner, she heard footsteps behind her. They were coming fast. Tasha didn't need to look to know who it was. Brooke and her friends were following her. They liked to make sure their targets knew they were being hunted. "Where do you think you're going, Tasha?" Brooke's voice was close now, like she was standing right behind her. "You think you can just walk away from us? Not this time." Tasha picked up the pace, almost running now, but the laughter only grew louder, ringing in her ears. "Oh, come on, don't be such a baby," one of the other girls said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "You're just so big. Don't you get tired carrying all that weight around?" Tasha's throat tightened, and she fought back tears. She hated how they made her feel. She hated how, no matter how many times she tried to brush it off, it still hurt every single time. Her fingers tightened around her books as if they were the only thing holding her together. She turned the corner sharply, desperate to get to class, but that's when it happened. Brooke's hand shot out and grabbed her arm. "You're not going anywhere," she said with a smirk. "You should really try to do something about that extra weight, Tasha. Maybe we'll give you a makeover." Tasha tried to pull away, but Brooke's grip tightened. For a moment, she felt trapped, like there was no way out. She couldn't understand why Brooke hated her so much. What had she done to deserve this? And then, without thinking, Tasha did something she didn't even know she was capable of. She jerked her arm free, the sudden motion so fast and unexpected that Brooke stumbled back, nearly losing her balance. The girls around her stopped laughing, surprised by Tasha's sudden defiance. Tasha stood there for a moment, her heart pounding in her chest. She couldn't believe what she had just done. She had fought back. For the first time in forever, she hadn't just let them have their way. But the moment passed quickly. Brooke recovered, and the laughter started again, louder than ever. "Look at her," Brooke sneered. "Thinks she's a fighter. You're nothing, Tasha. You'll always be the fat girl." Tasha felt a hot tear slide down her cheek, but she wiped it away quickly, refusing to let them see her break. She didn't say anything else. She didn't need to. She turned on her heel and walked away, feeling their eyes on her, but this time, it didn't feel as heavy. It was as if, for the first time, she realized that she didn't have to just take it. Maybe she could fight back after all. As she walked to her next class, her mind raced. She wasn't sure what had come over her, but a small part of her felt something she hadn't in a long time: power. Maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to stay quiet anymore. The next day, Tasha couldn't shake the feeling of what had happened. As she sat in the classroom, her mind kept replaying the moment when she had stood up to Brooke. It had felt empowering in the moment, but now that she was alone with her thoughts, she wasn't so sure. She had always kept to herself, avoided confrontation, and now she was wondering if she had made a mistake. What if things got worse? What if Brooke and her friends came after her harder? But there was another part of her, something small but growing, that refused to let the fear control her. That feeling from earlier, the one when she had pulled away from Brooke, was still with her. She had done something she never thought possible. She had fought back. She glanced at the clock. It was almost time for lunch. She always ate in the library, away from the crowds, where it was quieter. Tasha didn't mind being alone. In fact, it was a comfort. The world outside could be loud and harsh, but in the library, she could hide behind her books and forget about the world for a while. As she packed up her things, she overheard some of the other students talking. She could hear the giggles and whispers before she even turned around. "Did you see what happened with Tasha?" one of the girls said. "I can't believe she actually stood up to Brooke. I didn't know she had it in her." "Yeah, well, maybe that's why she's so angry." "You saw the way she acted, right?" another girl added. "She's so big, and yet she thinks she can take on Brooke. I don't know if I'd call that brave. It's kind of pathetic." Tasha's heart sank as the whispers continued. They were talking about her again, but this time it felt different. It wasn't the usual cruel teasing. There was something else there, something she couldn't quite explain. It was as if they were surprised by her, as if they didn't expect her to stand up for herself. But the more she heard, the more she realized something. They weren't just talking about her being the fat girl anymore. No, there was something else. The whispers carried with them a sense of curiosity, of confusion. They were beginning to see her in a different light. Tasha shook her head, trying to clear the thoughts from her mind. She didn't want to dwell on it. Instead, she walked to the library, opened the door, and slipped inside. The quiet was a relief, a welcome change from the noise of the hallways. She found her usual spot by the window, where she could look out at the empty courtyard and escape into her world of books. But as she sat down and unpacked her lunch, she couldn't help but think about the way the other students were reacting. Maybe she wasn't invisible anymore. Maybe, just maybe, things were starting to change. She didn't know how long she had been eating when she heard footsteps approaching. She looked up, startled, to see none other than Brooke standing at the entrance of the library. Tasha's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't sure what to expect, but she wasn't ready for this. Brooke walked in with her usual confidence, her friends trailing behind her. They didn't speak at first, just stared at Tasha like she was some kind of puzzle they couldn't figure out. For a long moment, it was just silence, the kind of uncomfortable silence that always made Tasha want to shrink into herself. Then, Brooke spoke, her voice almost too sweet, too polite. "Hey, Tasha. We need to talk." Tasha swallowed hard, her mouth suddenly dry. This was it. This was where things could go wrong. She could feel the heat of panic rising in her chest, but she forced herself to stay calm. She wasn't going to back down this time. "About what?" Tasha asked, her voice steady even though her heart was racing. Brooke took a step forward, her eyes scanning Tasha up and down. "About what happened yesterday. You know, with the whole fighting back thing. I just wanted to say, it was cute, you know? But you're really not in our league. You don't belong here. You never will." Tasha clenched her jaw. The words stung, but she wasn't going to let Brooke see how much they hurt. Instead, she straightened her back and met Brooke's gaze. "I don't need to be in your league, Brooke. I'm not here to impress you." Brooke's smile faltered, just for a second, before it returned with full force. "I know you're not," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "But that doesn't mean you shouldn't know your place." Tasha didn't say anything. She didn't need to. There was no point in trying to change Brooke's mind. She had spent too many years worrying about what people thought of her, and now, she was done. "Well," Brooke said, turning to leave, "just remember this, you're still nothing more than the fat girl who doesn't belong. And that's never going to change." Tasha watched as Brooke and her friends walked out, the sound of their footsteps fading down the hallway. For a long moment, she sat there, alone in the silence of the library. But something had shifted inside her. Brooke's words didn't hold the same power over her anymore. Tasha took a deep breath, feeling the weight lift off her shoulders. Maybe things weren't going to change overnight, but she knew one thing for sure, she wasn't going to let anyone define her anymore. The next day, something unexpected happened. As Tasha walked into the gym for her physical education class, she noticed a group of students gathered near the bleachers, whispering. They weren't laughing. They weren't mocking her. Instead, they were watching her, studying her with curiosity. She felt a twinge of nervousness, but she squared her shoulders and walked past them. She wasn't going to hide. Not anymore. As the class started, the coach gave everyone a few minutes to warm up. Tasha laced up her sneakers and jogged over to the track. She didn't know why, but something inside her urged her to run faster. She had always been slower than the other kids, but today, she pushed herself harder. Her breath came faster, her legs burned with the effort, but she didn't stop. She wasn't just running from the past anymore. She was running towards something new. As she finished her lap, she was out of breath but filled with a sense of accomplishment. She had done it. She had pushed herself further than she ever had before. And for the first time in a long time, she realized that maybe, just maybe, she was stronger than she had ever given herself credit for. The following week, Tasha's world seemed to shift in small, unexpected ways. She had expected things to go back to normal, to slide back into the background where she could hide from everyone. But somehow, the events of the previous days kept following her, like a shadow that refused to leave. It was the middle of the school day when Tasha found herself in the gymnasium. She had never been a fan of gym class. The sports, the competitions, the attention, it all made her uncomfortable. But today was different. She was different. As Tasha walked into the gym, she immediately noticed something. The usual group of students, the ones who always formed the cliques, were looking at her. Not in the way they usually did, not with mockery or pity, but with curiosity. It wasn't a stare she was used to. There was no laughter, no whispering behind hands, just quiet observation. It made her feel both self-conscious and empowered at the same time. Today was supposed to be a simple warm-up session, nothing intense. The coach had instructed everyone to start by jogging around the gym, and Tasha decided to do just that. But something strange happened as she started running. The familiar sounds of her sneakers hitting the floor, the thump of her heart in her chest, it all felt different. She pushed herself harder than usual, her breath coming in fast bursts, her legs burning with every step. She didn't know why, but she felt like running faster than ever before. It wasn't just about the physical challenge anymore. Something inside her urged her to go further, to prove something not to the others, but to herself. As she rounded the corner of the gym, she glanced to the side and saw Brooke and her friends sitting on the bleachers. Tasha's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected them to be there. Brooke, as usual, had a smug smile on her face, and she was watching Tasha with that same expression of superiority. But for the first time, it didn't bother Tasha. She kept running. Tasha knew they were watching. She could feel their eyes on her, but this time, it didn't make her self-conscious. It didn't make her feel small. Instead, she found herself picking up speed, her breathing steady as she kept pushing herself to go faster. By the time the coach called for everyone to stop, Tasha was breathing heavily, but she was proud. She had done something she hadn't thought was possible. She had run the entire length of the gym without stopping, without giving in to the tiredness that usually crept up on her. For the first time, she felt like she was in control. The next few days, Tasha started to notice something else. The whispers weren't as cruel as before. The laughter wasn't as loud. It was as though the students were starting to look at her differently, like they were seeing her for the first time. Maybe it was because of the way she had stood up to Brooke. Maybe it was because she was starting to feel more confident in herself. Whatever it was clear that something had changed. But things weren't perfect. The tension still simmered just below the surface. Brooke and her friends hadn't forgotten about what had happened in the gym. In fact, Tasha could feel the hostility growing in their eyes every time they passed each other in the hallways. Brooke didn't like losing control, and Tasha could tell she was getting ready to strike back. One afternoon, during lunch, Tasha was sitting by herself, as usual, in the library. She was lost in a book, trying to escape the noise of the outside world. She had learned that the library was her safe place, where she could forget about everything else. But today, the peace was short-lived. The sound of footsteps echoed through the library, and Tasha glanced up. Brooke and her friends walked in, looking as though they had something to prove. Tasha froze, her heart pounding. This wasn't going to be good. Brooke walked over to her, the same smug smile on her face. "Tasha," she said, her voice dripping with mock sweetness, "you've been making quite the impression lately. I never knew you had it in you." Tasha didn't say anything. She knew where this was going, and she wasn't going to give Brooke the satisfaction of a response. Brooke sat down across from her, her friends standing behind her like silent guards. "I've been thinking," she continued, her voice low, "about what happened the other day. You think you're some kind of fighter now, don't you?" Tasha didn't answer. She kept her gaze on her book, refusing to engage. Brooke leaned forward, her voice growing more insistent. "Let's face it, Tasha. You're never going to be anything more than the fat girl who thinks she can box. You're not cut out for it. You're just pretending, and sooner or later, everyone's going to see it. Tasha felt the old anger bubbling up inside her, but she didn't react. She refused to let Brooke get to her. I'm not pretending, she said quietly, looking up from her book for the first time. And I don't need your approval. The words were simple, but they held more weight than Tasha had realized. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't seeking validation from anyone else. She wasn't trying to fit into their mold. She was standing up for herself. Brooke's smile faltered, but only for a second. Fine, she said, standing up. But just remember this, Tasha. No matter how hard you try, you'll never be like us. You'll never belong. And with that, Brooke and her friends walked out, leaving Tasha sitting alone in the library. For a moment, Tasha felt the old familiar weight of self-doubt creeping in, but she quickly shook it off. She wasn't going to let Brooke's words have the same power over her. She wasn't like them, and she didn't need to be. As the days went by, Tasha kept running. She kept training, pushing herself harder each time, even when it felt impossible. She spent hours after school at the local gym, hitting the punching bags with everything she had, imagining Brooke's face with every punch. Her strength was growing, not just physically, but mentally as well. She was becoming the person she had always wanted to be, the person she had hidden inside for so long. One afternoon, during gym class, the coach announced that there would be a special event, a student boxing competition. Tasha felt a strange sense of excitement, mixed with fear. This was it. This was the moment where she could show everyone, especially Brooke, what she was truly capable of. When the day of the competition arrived, Tasha stood in front of the gym, her heart racing. She wasn't sure what to expect, but she knew one thing: she wasn't going to back down. She wasn't just fighting for the trophy. She was fighting for herself. As she stepped into the ring, she saw Brooke sitting in the stands, watching her closely. Tasha took a deep breath and squared her shoulders. The bell rang, and the match began. The gym was buzzing with excitement, and the atmosphere felt different today. The usual chatter, the squeak of sneakers on the court, and the smell of old gym mats seemed somehow distant. Tasha could barely focus on anything except the ring in the center of the gym. Her heart thudded against her chest like a drum beat. It was the day of the competition, the moment she had been both dreading and waiting for. She had spent weeks preparing for this, practicing late into the night, running laps around the block, hitting the punching bags at the gym until her arms ached, and pushing herself further than she ever thought she could. But now, standing in front of the ring, it all felt so real. This wasn't just a competition, it was a statement. It was her chance to show everyone, including herself, that she wasn't the weak, helpless girl they thought she was. She was strong. She had power, and she wasn't going to hide it anymore. As the coach called out the names of the participants, Tasha stood still in the corner of the gym, trying to calm the storm inside her. She watched as other students were called up, their faces a mix of excitement and nerves. Some were confident, others unsure, but they all had one thing in common: they were there to compete. Tasha's turn came, and her feet felt heavy as she walked toward the ring. The crowd's eyes were on her, some curious, some skeptical, but there were fewer mocking smiles now. Something had shifted. Maybe it was her training, maybe it was the way she had carried herself recently, but the crowd wasn't laughing at her anymore. They were watching her, waiting to see what she would do. Her opponent, Mia, was already in the ring, bouncing on her feet, ready to fight. Mia was quick and agile, the kind of opponent Tasha knew would be challenging. She had seen Mia train before. She was good, very good, but Tasha had something she hadn't had before: confidence. She wasn't just going to survive this match, she was going to prove herself. The bell rang, and the match began. At first, Tasha hesitated, unsure of the best way to approach Mia. Mia was quick on her feet, dancing around the ring with ease, landing a few light jabs to Tasha's face. Tasha took the hits but didn't back away. She focused, remembering everything her father had taught her: stay calm, don't rush, and wait for the right moment. Mia came in for another quick punch, but Tasha was ready this time. She moved to the side, using the momentum to push Mia off balance. In that split second, Tasha saw her opening. She threw a powerful jab to Mia's side, catching her off guard. The crowd gasped as Mia stumbled back, clearly surprised by the strength behind Tasha's punch. Tasha's heart raced, and for the first time in the match, she felt in control. She wasn't just reacting anymore, she was driving the fight. She moved with more confidence now, her feet steady on the mat. She bobbed and weaved, avoiding Mia's punches with surprising speed. Each time Mia tried to land a hit, Tasha was one step ahead, her mind sharp, her body moving fluidly as if it was meant to be here. But the match wasn't over. Mia was fast, and she wasn't about to give up. She regrouped, taking a deep breath before charging forward with renewed energy. She landed a hard punch to Tasha's shoulder, making her stumble slightly. The blow reminded Tasha that this wasn't going to be easy. She couldn't afford to get careless now. The next few minutes were a blur. The two of them traded punches, each one harder than the last. Tasha's arms began to feel heavy, her muscles aching, but she didn't slow down. She had come too far to stop now. The crowd's cheers grew louder as the fight intensified, but Tasha blocked out the noise, focusing only on Mia and the space around her. Mia came at her again, but this time, Tasha was ready. She ducked under Mia's punch and, using all the strength she had left, landed a clean right hook to Mia's jaw. It was a solid hit, and Mia staggered back, her eyes wide in shock. She tried to recover, but Tasha wasn't giving her the chance. Tasha followed up with a series of quick jabs, each one landing with more precision and force than the last. Mia's defenses began to break down. She tried to block, but she couldn't keep up with Tasha's relentless pace. It wasn't just the strength in Tasha's punches that was overwhelming, it was the sheer determination in her eyes. She wasn't the same girl who had walked into this gym weeks ago, unsure of herself and afraid of what others thought. This was the new Tasha, the one who wasn't afraid to fight back, the one who knew her worth. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Mia's legs buckled beneath her, and she went down. The gym fell silent for a moment, as everyone waited to see if she would get back up. The referee began the countdown, but Mia didn't move. She stayed on the mat, unable to continue. Tasha stood there, her chest heaving with exhaustion, as the crowd erupted into applause. She had won. She had won, not just the match, but something far greater. She had proven to herself and everyone watching that she wasn't just the girl they thought she was. She was a fighter. She was strong. She was capable of so much more than anyone had ever given her credit for. As the coach raised her hand in victory, Tasha looked around the gym. She saw Brooke in the stands, staring at her with an expression that was hard to read, part surprise, part frustration. But Tasha didn't care. Brooke didn't matter anymore. Tasha wasn't fighting for her approval, or anyone else's. She had done this for herself. When the match was over and the crowd began to disperse, Tasha felt a wave of relief wash over her. She had faced her fears and come out on top. She had shown everyone that she wasn't just the fat girl. She was a force to be reckoned with. As she left the ring, her body aching and her mind buzzing with adrenaline, Tasha couldn't help but smile. She had taken the first step toward the person she wanted to be. And this was only the beginning. The days after the match felt like a blur. Tasha had won, and yet, it wasn't the victory that had her mind spinning. It was what came next, the realization that she had changed, that the girl she had been before the fight no longer seemed to exist. She wasn't just someone people ignored or laughed at anymore. She wasn't the quiet girl who kept her head down to avoid attention. Now, she was someone who had stood up, not just to a bully, but to her own fears. She had fought for herself. The attention she had once dreaded now felt different. It wasn't just the quiet whispers or the mocking laughter she had grown used to. People were looking at her in a new way, some with admiration, others with awe. They no longer saw the fat girl, the one who always seemed to be in the background. They saw someone strong, someone capable. And even though it made her nervous, Tasha realized that she could live with this new version of attention. She could handle it. Still, the road wasn't always easy. The morning after the competition, Tasha found herself walking through the halls of school again. The familiar stares and whispers were still there, but this time, they felt different. Some students nodded at her, others gave her small smiles. Even the ones who had once mocked her seemed hesitant to make fun of her now. There was respect in their eyes, something she had never seen before. But not everyone had changed. Brooke, for example, still walked the halls like she owned them. Her usual group of friends surrounded her, and when they saw Tasha, Brooke's gaze flickered with something between resentment and curiosity. Tasha wasn't sure what to make of it, but she didn't care. Brooke was still trying to control everything around her, but now, Tasha wasn't afraid to be seen. She wasn't afraid to be herself. That afternoon, as Tasha walked to her locker, she heard the familiar sound of footsteps behind her. She knew who it was before she even turned around. Brooke. "Hey, Tasha," Brooke's voice was cool, almost friendly, but there was a sharp edge to it. Tasha didn't respond immediately, not sure what to expect. She had never had a conversation like this with Brooke before, and part of her was bracing for the usual mockery. Brooke took a step closer, her expression unreadable. "I've been thinking," she began, her tone softening. "You were really good in the match." "I didn't expect that." Tasha raised an eyebrow. She wasn't sure if this was some kind of trap, if Brooke was trying to manipulate her or make her feel like she didn't belong in the spotlight. But she decided to stay calm. She had faced enough bullies to know that sometimes, their words didn't mean anything. "Thanks," Tasha said quietly. "I worked hard for it." Brooke nodded, though her face didn't quite show any genuine warmth. "Yeah, I guess you did. But you still have a long way to go. People like us, we don't just get to walk in and take over. You'll have to fight for your place here." Tasha felt a flicker of frustration rising in her chest. She could see where this was going. Brooke was trying to undermine her again, to remind her that she wasn't one of them. But instead of letting the anger boil over, Tasha took a deep breath. She didn't need to engage in this kind of conversation anymore. She wasn't fighting for Brooke's approval. She was fighting for herself. "I'm not trying to take over anyone's place," Tasha replied calmly. "I'm just trying to be myself. If that's a problem for you, then I guess we'll both have to learn to deal with it." For a moment, Brooke just stared at her. Her lips parted as if she was about to say something else, but then she seemed to reconsider. Finally, she turned and walked away, leaving Tasha standing there, feeling a sense of relief. It was the first time Tasha had ever stood up to Brooke like that, without hesitation, without fear. It felt good, and she realized that this moment was one of the most important ones of all. She wasn't afraid of Brooke anymore. She wasn't afraid of anyone. That evening, Tasha sat down with her father at the kitchen table, the same place they had always talked after a long day. She had been thinking a lot about the match and everything that had followed. She hadn't told him about the conversation with Brooke, but she felt like now was the time. "I did it," Tasha said, her voice a little quieter than usual. "I won the match. But it's not just about the win. It's everything after it. I don't know if I can handle all the attention. I don't know if I'm ready for all of this. Her father looked up from his plate, his eyes softening. You've been ready for a long time, Tasha. The question is whether you believe in yourself. You've got something in you that's been waiting to come out. And now that it has, there's no going back. But you're not alone in this. Tasha smiled, feeling a wave of gratitude. Her father's words meant more than he could know. He had always been her rock, her trainer, her biggest supporter. And now, for the first time, she realized just how much she had learned from him, not just about boxing, but about life itself. The next day, Tasha walked into school with a new sense of purpose. She wasn't just going through the motions anymore. She had a fire inside her, a drive to prove to herself that she was worthy of respect. She wasn't trying to be anyone she wasn't. She was simply being Tasha, the girl who had always been underestimated but was no longer afraid to fight for what she deserved. The school day passed in a blur of faces, some still uncertain about how to approach her, others with newfound respect. But through it all, Tasha didn't let the uncertainty faze her. She wasn't looking for approval from anyone anymore. She knew who she was, and that was enough. As the bell rang at the end of the day, Tasha made her way to the gym for another round of training. She wasn't sure where this journey would take her, but she knew one thing for certain: she was ready. Ready to face whatever came next, whether it was another fight or the challenge of standing strong in the face of anyone who doubted her. She had proven to herself that she could do anything. And now, with every punch, every step forward, she was getting closer to the person she was always meant to be.